2002's Earth Alien, also known as Endangered Species, sees us rather unfortunately tumbling down the rabbit hole that is mid to low budget indie studios of the mid-90s to the mid-2000s. Back before the film market was dominated with films from Asylum or the Sci-fi Channel, small start-up studios would often try to capitalise on existing pictures by producing modestly budgeted and inevitably lower quality productions, with the aim of either tricking some poor schmuck into parting with their cash by convincing them that the film they were buying was loosely linked or going to be similar to a major film franchise, see Alien Species, or they'd get a few reasonably well-known B and C grade actors to appear in the movie and then market the film as, imagine that sci-fi movie you love, but it has a celebrity you kinda sorta remember liking from that one time. See Alien Intruder. These small studios were a step up from the low, no-budget indie filmmaking scene that weren't organised enough to efficiently distribute their movies and were light years ahead of the SOV crowd. But they were just creaky enough that you could spot that they definitely weren't professional studio fodder, and that you might not be in for quite a smoother time as you'd expect. The best case scenario for these movies, they get picked up by a bigger studio, think Troma or Full Moon Features, and distributed under their label. If you ran a startup production company and got hooked into those sweet, sweet Troma dollars, you can believe you'd be riding the gravy train for a good while. And while today's film didn't quite get so lucky as to get the Full Moon treatment, it's definitely a small-scale production that fits the Alien Intruder mould. Earth Alien is a sci-fi thriller movie that somehow managed the pure damn luck of scoring Eric Roberts, John Rhys Davies and Arnold Vosloo. Yes, Imhotep from The Mummy, less than 12 months after The Mummy returns. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. In a rather sedate picture that throws pacing clean out of the window, Roberts plays Sully, a detective for the local police who's working to solve the case of a series of mass murder and abductions. The killer in question only seems to attack gyms or people leaving gyms, and it seems to be a repetitive pattern. He'll turn up at a gym that's open late at night, straight up murder everyone by shooting them through the eye, and then abduct between 6 to 12 of them, leaving the rest for the police to find. Sully's a super dry, charismatic cop and a family man to 2 loving daughters and a sexually frustrated and deeply loving wife who just really wants 30 minutes alone with her husband. In private. To fuck. Sully tries to get things done by the book, but isn't afraid to go against it if he needs results, damn it. But this case has got him stumped. There are connections that link all the murders up, but the motive isn't clear, nor are there any leads as to who the killer might actually be. At the same time, we're introduced to a character simply known as Warden, played by Vosloo. Warden appears to live in a rundown apartment, doesn't seem to speak, and is plagued with nightmares of dinosaurs attacking him. At first, it's not entirely clear as to exactly why we keep cutting back to Warden's ongoing story of walking the streets, paying rent, and living in poverty-based conditions. That is until he's revealed to be an alien of some kind. Or a time traveller. Honestly, the film doesn't really make it all that clear until the final 10 minutes of the runtime, and I really don't want to spoil it here. Anyway, Sully gets a break when one of the victims of the last gym attack manages to survive and is strong enough to give evidence. He heads over to the hospital where the victim mentions that she's already spoken to a police officer. Sully heads out into the hospital corridor and finds Warden trying to escape and a chase ensues. After much running and parkour, Sully manages to corner Warden, at which point he shoots him 3 times at point blank range. Warden falls down for a bit, then he gets right back up, and it's only when he's hit with a taser that he eventually goes down and stays down. He's arrested and taken into custody. They think they've caught the right guy, but they're wrong. As that night another incident happens and a media fracas around it forces the chief to take the case off Sully and give it to his colleague Wachowski, played by John Rhys Davies. But Sully is a restless cop who can't let a good mystery go unsolved. So he decides to continue working on the case out of hours, and eventually he manages to track down Warden to his apartment. He waits for Warden to leave and then uses his police status to basically search Warden's apartment without a warrant. Once inside, at first he just sees a normal apartment, but he quickly stumbles on a drawer filled with the most early 2000s looking sunglasses known to humanity. And when he puts a pair on, he's able to see hidden objects in the apartment that were cloaked with some kind of invisibility shield. While this illegal search is taking place, however, our killer bad alien decides to take out a strip club. He turns up and straight up murders everyone again, but luckily one of the bouncers of the club manages to live long enough to call the police while the killer's still in the club. The police quickly surround the place, but our evil alien gets rid of them super quick by simply blowing them all up. He then gets in a truck and drives off. Sully, however, has a police radio in his car and hears about the incident. He arrives just as the truck is leaving and follows it back to an abandoned warehouse, where it turns invisible. This is the point where all three of our main characters finally meet, as it's revealed that Warden is in fact a good guy trying to take down the killer at the same time Sully is. Only he ideally needs to take the killer alive. Cue a massive car chase that results in a Western-style showdown in which Sully manages to shoot off the killer's arm, revealing him to not be of this earth. So, with time running out and both Sully and Warden now working together to bring the evil alien to justice, will the plans of the evil alien slowly but surely come to fruition? Will Warden get his man? Will John Rhys Davies' purpose in this film be revealed? And will Sully's wife finally get the dicking she so desperately wants and deserves? Some of those questions will be answered if you watch Earth Alien. This script is crap. I know it's counterproductive to buzzword this, but it is. It really is. It's about 60% padding to 30% actual plot. And what plot there is isn't really all that interesting to begin with. The writer and director were clearly inspired by movies like Predator, The Terminator, and Terminator 2, and when I say clearly inspired, what I mean is blatantly rips off on multiple occasions to a border litigious level. But somehow they've managed to do it in the most boring, uninspired way possible. Vast swathes of the script are given up to staff meetings between the chief and the detectives, and these scenes basically consist of detectives recapping verbatim the plot and spewing corny exposition, largely consisting of things we already know, or extended scenes in the pathology and ballistics department, where exposition is just rapidly shoveled at you at the quickest and least interesting way possible. I don't know why John Rhys Davies is in this movie. I haven't a single damn clue. Literally the only thing he does through the entire film is act like everyone in the film is an idiot. Occasionally he'll randomly shout about how ridiculous some of the other detectives' ideas are, and at some point in the second act he has the honour of taking the case off Sully. Though he doesn't really do anything even with that. What was the point in having him in this movie? He literally does nothing. The pacing is just awful, with the first act being ultra slow and padded to the gills, the second act being a hodgepodge of half-baked ideas married up to even more padding, and a third act that's crammed with stunts and explosions to the point that the budget clearly ran out and they had to construct one of the most underwhelming, disappointing and rushed endings that I've seen in cinema in a very long time. It genuinely feels like they were told they had more money and days filming than they actually had, and when it all fell apart, they had to make up the end of the film on a car park in 10 minutes. It sucks. The story sucks. And when the best thing in the script are elements stolen from other movies but done poorer, you know you've screwed up somewhere. I don't really know what the message of this film was. It may have been a comment on animal cruelty, as they do reference several times incidents of humans standing up for animal welfare, but it's all very half-hearted in putting that message across, and let's be honest, any film trying to put across a well-intentioned, thought-provoking message is inevitably going to have the strength and the effect of that message somewhat watered down if every 15 minutes we get extreme and gratuitous shots of full frontal nudity or implied softcore sex. I've seen Eric Roberts' blowjob face now. That's something no man need nor want ever see. My therapy starts on Monday. The dialogue is probably the best part of the script, and even then I can't say it's incredible. There's some reasonably dry and sarcastic lines, but the dialogue here is giving me real Garth Marenghi vibes. It's all very descriptive and relies heavily on over-exposition to sell elements of the film that either couldn't be realised or didn't need to be clarified in such minute detail. The only thing that saves it from being objectively awful is that the actors involved in this film clearly didn't give a crap about it, and regularly deliver their lines with such an over-the-top, scene-chewing hamminess that quite often it's the delivery that saves the line rather than the line itself being any good. It was here that I decided to look up who the writer for this script was, and, well, long-time viewers of this show may want to brace for impact. This was written and directed by Kevin Tenney, who you'll remember as the writer of 1997's Demon House, a film so awful they had to not call it Night of the Demons 3 through fear of poisoning the franchise's well. He has 16 directing credits and 10 writing credits, and I'd say he's probably a better director than a writer, predominantly because his directorship has helmed movies like the original Night of the Demons, Witch Trap and Peacemaker. But his writing? It basically consists of low-budget sequels to low-budget franchises, the lowest of the low, or just really schlocky pictures that usually end up on this channel. For reference, his highest reviewed writing credit is a 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb, and that's a bit of an abnormality, with the rest generally sitting at a 4 out of 10. While the script itself may be hot garbage, the direction here actually isn't too bad. There is an over-reliance on green screen to create the invisibility effects within the film, and none of them really work all that great, with half the shots basically looking like old masking techniques from the 1960s and the others looking like unfinished renderings. But what we do have here is some rather heavy-handed but ultimately acceptable direction. The cast seem to be having a ball on set here, and while they're all on cruise control for the most part, Tenney's able to get them to give about as much as this film deserves. Which, well, okay then. There's also some quite nice, if not quite cheap looking sets and location work on display here again. Tenney works with them to produce something that's of quality, which, while that sounds praiseworthy, ultimately shows that it's far, far from attaining a standard that is quality. There are some really nice stunts and explosions thrown around in the second and third acts that do definitely go in this film's favour. They look great. And Tenney's really able to get some nice tension going with some of the chase scenes. But these positives are ultimately defanged when you throw in some super ropey early 2000s CG that's had to almost completely be darkened artificially beyond visual recognition to even remotely look passable. That and the near constant ogling of women in this film to an almost seedy and voyeuristic level means that while there are some good nuggets here, it's all a bit too undercooked and grubby for me, I'm afraid. Another no from me ultimately. The Cine is probably this film's strongest technical achievement, in the sense that it looks like a film with a mid-range budget shot in 1995. And I'm really not kidding here. The first thing that came to my mind within 10 minutes of putting this film on was, oh, this looks like Alien Species. And it really, really does. And Alien Species came out in 1995, a full 7 years before this movie. Everything's shot fairly static, barring the occasional chase sequence. All the various exposition scenes tend to just be head and shoulder shots, occasionally cutting back to a wide. At a push you'll get a mid shot thrown in for good measure, but it's all very painting by numbers. What is interesting, however, are the aforementioned chase sequences, which I don't know if the camera crew and director decided to freebase coffee all night before the shoot day, but those moments have definitely had a kick up the arse. We have a full spectrum of shot types, from Dutch angles to pans, tracking shots to close-ups, mids, wides, extreme close-ups. You name it, they shot it in those chase sequences. The editing too seemingly also got a kick up the arse for the chase scenes as well, with super quick cuts often running 2 or 3 narratives at the same time. It regularly borders on all falling into a complete mess, but for my money, it never quite completely obliterates itself. It manages to keep it together right up until the end credits. I just find it funny how quickly it jumped from pedestrian to roadrunner. Performance-wise, where do I even begin? I'm beginning to have a growing appreciation for Eric Roberts as a man who literally does not give a fuck and will perform to the ability he thinks the work deserves. Here, he doesn't care. He just doesn't give a shit. In the most entertaining and withering way imaginable, he's easily the biggest and best reason to see this movie, as he delivers straight lines with a sarcasm and not arsedness that borders on the hilarious sometimes. He's clearly here just having fun, and that really translates in this. If the tone of the film was, well, good, Roberts would have been a detriment here. But because the film's just so gnarly on that front, Roberts' fun here is arguably the only solid footing I can offer you in terms of going to see this. Roberts makes this movie. Rhys Davies' performance is largely bombastic and bordering on the irritable. I can only assume he was hired for the job because the filmmakers discovered that they could hire him for the job. His character's largely unpleasant and has at least one super racist moment that made me feel quite uncomfortable. If he had more purpose in this film, or even if he just had better material to work with, this may have panned out differently. As it stands, this isn't his finest hour, and it feels more like a waste of talent than anything else. Not that Rhys Davies is that good. Robot in the family. As for Vosloo, he's alright. He feels like the only actor here taking the film with any degree of seriousness, and he plays his role as Warden with a coldness that, while it didn't exactly sell me on believability around the revelations that are revealed about his character in the third act, he's fine. Just about. Same goes for Al Sapienza as the killer in this. He's basically doing an Arnie in T2 impression. It's not particularly believable, but it'll do. Just about. And the rest of the cast? Dreadful to meh. Most feel like porn acting. No one outside of the core four main actors in this film feels in any way like they deserve to be in the movie. Make of that what you will. Finally, the soundtrack. And did somebody say all MIDI composed score? Because that's what you're getting. Seriously, this thing's 80% cheap MIDI farting to 20% library tracks, and that's it. It sounds like a cheap 90s sci-fi movie with the occasional bit of Matrix-esque rave music thrown in every so often during the action and chase scenes. It's not revolutionary, it didn't make me sit up and pay attention, and it didn't do anything to sell this movie to me. It's literally only there because apparently not putting any music in the background of your film is supposedly sometimes the less preferable alternative. It's super bland, is what I'm getting at. Earth Alien was unceremoniously dumped on DVD in 2007 by Boulevard Entertainment in the UK. I have to presume it came out on DVD in the States sometime around 2002 or 2003 as Endangered Species, and then it took some time to turn up here. And as a testimony to just how well it was received in England, less than 12 months later it was shat back out again as a double feature pack with everyone's Prism Leisure bargain bin favourite, Legend of the Mummy 2. The picture quality on this release is passable, if not beginning to show its age a bit. It's cropped for pan and scan, which is a bit of a shame, and the encode's on the lower end of the scale, as I did catch the occasional bit of pixelation in places, particularly the darker scenes. On the extras front, there's a trailer for the film that's clearly been recut from the original US version to insert the new retitling of this film as much as physically possible, and I don't know where the hell they sourced this trailer from, but it's presented in what appears to be 120p and looks like someone made a shot-on-video remake of this film just for the trailer. It's that bad. So yeah, bit of a rubbish release in honesty. No Blu-ray available or likely to be released anytime soon. It's generally super cheap online, so if you're brave enough, there you go. I've ripped on this film kinda hard, and in honesty it does have elements that do work in its favour. Roberts is a fun leading man, he has some great moments here that I enjoyed watching. The action scenes for the most part are good and solid, and there's some downright silly moments that would in most other films earn it a one-way ticket to the so bad it's good pile. But there's just too many cons: the lackluster direction and Cine, the dismal and 90% breadcrumb-based script, the bland and uninspired soundtrack, and the total seediness this film has towards its female cast is just too much for me, honestly. Is this a fun movie? Yeah, I'd say if you had a couple of friends around and a few beers, you'd probably have a laugh with this one. Can I recommend it? Absolutely not. There's way better sci-fi schlock out there, my friends, and this one, for me at least, was not my kind of rodeo.